Tit for Tat is a program with passionate people discussing the things they love. Adult language and themes will be used. Listener discretion is advised.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Tit for Tat. Tonight with us is Gene Hoyle, creator of Gateway Runners and Nerd Nation Publishing. Thank you for joining us tonight, Gene.
Hey, thanks for having me.
As always, we have Jay Bowman with me.
Fuck you, Russia.
Oh, and now we start to begin with. Our tonight's...
Oh, boy.
As if you haven't guessed, tonight's comic content... One of these days I'll learn to fucking talk. Tonight's subject is about comics. We're going to try to discuss pretty much a broad stroke generation on this one, guys, okay? We're going to start with the majors, and then we're going to move with the independents and see how the difference of technology has allowed for more of an independence to have a force. As case in point, your particular comic, correct, Gene?
Yeah. It's in my opinion, it's actually three levels of comics currently. I think there's the mainstream, there's the independent stuff, and then there's us at the bottom in the dark alley, the self-publishers that you see at Artist Alley.
So, okay, that's a good place to start. Why do you say that you are the bottom layer?
Well, in as such as we're not recognized as much as the indies or the real ones. These are the guys that they print the stuff themselves with their own money.
I would like to correct you right there. I'm sorry, this is my own personal thing. You said the real ones. Mainstream comics are not the only real comics. I'm going to put that qualifier out right now. I do not like that attitude towards comics.
Well, you know what? It's funny that you say that because I've my whole life I've been a big fan of the big two, Marvel and DC, delving into their universes, loving everything they put out, and I find myself in I guess maybe as I'm getting older and more bitter, I'm hating what they're putting out for the most part, and that's kind of what got me into this third layer. I guess it's more of an underground thing. If you go to a con, you go to Artist Alley. There's not as many people making comics as there used to be because, honestly, it's not all that profitable. But the people that are there are passionate. Some of the best books I've read in the last 3 years are books you can only buy through Artist Alley tables.
Okay, in the interest of full disclosure, I haven't read DC since Batman had his back broken and they put that fucking psycho in the armor. That totally went against the spirit of Batman for me. And I stopped reading Marvel about the time Peter sold his marriage to save a dying woman who begged him to let him die. That was too much.
Yeah, Spider-Man is my absolute favorite Marvel character of all time. And I've been reading it like monthly since I was like 6 years old. And keep in mind, this is like I was born in 71. So like from 77 to like into the 2000s, I read every issue. And I went back and read what I missed. Right around the time that Peter sold his soul to the devil and unmasked in public on TV, I stopped reading that book for like 2 years. That tells you how bad the book was at that time.
So... Yeah, it hasn't improved. I've tried picking it up since. It just...
Now, I do want to touch on one thing with Gene, since, you mentioned the big two. Do you find that it's now almost becoming the big three, now that somebody else is coming out, their own movie?
I'm not sure exactly which movie you're referring to, but I do think it's a big three. I think Image definitely takes that third slot.
that image. They've announced that they're supposed to be working on a Walking Dead movie now. The Walking Dead is everywhere with toys, the novels, the comics.
Yeah, they've done really well. There's a second show, Fear the Walking Dead, starting this season.
Oh yeah, they have the spin-off. They have the Talking Dead afterwards, and they've really.
No, you're right. I'm wondering now. I'm watching. I'm actually liking the Walking Dead show this season, and I'm watching an episode recently where they're in this parking lot, and it's really hot out. It's like a hot Atlanta summer, and the tar is melting, and the zombies who are laying there have melted into the tar, and it's this disgusting, great battle scene between like these guys on this tarmac, and I'm like, how are they going to up the ante for a movie? I don't even know how they could do it.
I'm personally not a big Walking Dead fan. Mainly, when I went in, I didn't like the cast cut for the show. I understand why they did it, but I just had problems there, and I lost interest in the comics personally when I found Saga and kind of went, okay, this is my drama.
Sure, but I get that.
But that brings up a question.
But
that does bring up a good question. What defines an actual comic? Are we talking just superheroes? Are those considered just comics now? Or graphic novels considered comics?
Well, going back to that kind of throws back to my opening with Mouse. What do we consider Mouse? Because Art Spiegelman considers it a graphic novel. Yet it's sold for a comic.
Let's go back to the old days since I'm an old man. Back in the day, comic books were the floppies, the single issues that were sold. Anytime they made an original story that was larger than, let's say, 48 pages, that was the definition of a graphic novel. Now, graphic novel exists as a term for hipsters who don't want to say they read comic books. So I don't know. Honestly, I don't care what you call them. I just want to read them. And Mouse. It goes to the American misunderstanding about comics. Like Ernest Goes to Camp is a movie, right? So is Gone with the Wind, but they're not comparable at all. And comics should be looked at in that same way. Something like Mouse versus something like the New 52. There's no comparison at all, but they're just part of the same. The comic is the conduit for telling the story.
And it all depends on the story, and some stories are better than others.
Right, yeah, but I don't think that better comics are graphic novels, whereas shitty comics are comics. My book that's coming out, you know what? It's a comic, and I like it.
Well, I've read your book, and it's well written, and your art's not bad. I personally would have chosen a different artist, but that's me.
Have you seen it? Have you read the Zero issue?
Yeah.
Have you seen it in color yet?
Not yet.
I think you should look at some of the pictures that are up. It might blow you away. Their style combines very well, the colorist and the artist. You may be sold on the.
I looked at the colors that you've put up. I swear I'm not a racist. I meant colored pages, people.
Says the Mexican.
And I do quite like the art style combined. It is a very good art style. It's one of those things, to go back to Saga, its art style defines the story in a way. And art style really needs to fit what it does. I say with Gateway Runners, an amazing job with that.
Well, what's interesting is Aaron and Kitty, who do the art in the book, were not the first artists on the book. There's an awesome artist who was a friend of mine named Ashley Lanny Hoy, and she was going to be the artist on the book. And she did 3 pages for me, and we did our Kickstarter a year ago. And that Kickstarter took a big old duty. It didn't make it. And then part of it was because we were asking for too much, and I did everything wrong I could do with that old Kickstarter, and so it failed. And it's not Ashley's fault, but the style, as you were saying, didn't match the book, and I think people sensed that and they didn't buy into it. And now with Aaron and Kitty on board, our Indiegogo campaign has already been successful. We're over 100%. We have like 5 days left, and we're hoping we could actually hit 15, which is possible. We'll see.
Well, speaking
But
of
yeah,
art
the style
styles, what I have my own opinion, but I want to hear from you guys who, one, creating the comics, and the other is selling comics. Jay, full disclosure, Jay does work in a comic book store, so he does do a little overboard at times.
We have to have our passion.
True. What defines a good artist? We all know what's a bad artist. Miller. Fuck you, Miller. I think everybody hears...
Remember his Daredevil stuff, though? Are you talking about Frank Miller?
Yeah.
He had his day. His Daredevil stuff reinvigorated the comic.
It did.
I mean, now I agree with you.
And then we have the other...
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, Miller he used to be a decent artist and a really good storyteller. Now he's a subpar artist and a terrible storyteller, in my opinion.
I would agree. He did fall, and yeah, I joke that he never left Sin City because there is that kind of edge now to all his work. Yet I also would say, Sin City was a good comic, in my opinion. I actually enjoyed that comic. But looking at what he's done recently, you can really see from the end of Sin City to what he's done that is just kind of really fallen. Something happened there.
Well, he hit the wall. It happens. He's just creatively, he's just bankrupt in his mind. He's just gone. I think he's done.
But on to William's original question on what makes a good artist and a good art style. I find the best artist isn't in how well you draw. It is in how you draw. Like, a good artist won't just draw good lines and pretty-looking characters. They will draw the story. They weave the words and the worlds into their characters. Mm-hmm. And it's like Atomic Robo. I love Atomic Robo, and I would say it's another case of art fitting the story. Because even though it has a certain style, that style is so weaved into what Atomic Robo is. And even when they're going through the timelines, like Atomic Robo in World War II, there's a dirtier style to the art that, while staying beautiful, works. It has that grit of World War II.
Yeah,
And
I would agree with that.
you
I'm
go.
sorry.
No.
I was gonna say, you're making an excellent point. I don't think there's bad or good art. There's just art that fits the story, and that's a big difference. Like something like I'm trying to think of style. I'm not a huge fan of Mike Mignola, but his stuff on Hellboy is perfect because it fits the tone of the story.
Hellboy, good place to start the answer. The next question. Let's get back to the big two, big three. What is working with their current lines? What isn't working? Why are they losing hand over fist, especially DC?
On DC,
Jay, you want to go first?
Yeah, on DC, I would say it's that they constantly reboot. That's what's failing. It feels like you can't get connected to a storyline, and when you do, I mean, it's like the Batman books. How many Batman books do we have out right now? And some of them are good. Batgirl is something, it's a good book. But then we look at, we have a main Batman story, a secondary Batman story, a sidekick story, and it's flooding the market. And then you get to the point where, you're like, okay, we're going to restart all of this. And at that point, your reader's going, okay, well, I've been reading this book for X number of months, X number of years. I love these characters. Now I am losing them. Now what you're going to put out isn't what I fell in love with, and it feels like everything I read no longer matters. Marvel, on the other hand, I know that they're going into a somewhat reboot, keeping canon, all of that. I think they do, in some ways, have the same problem of too many books for one series. Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man. Spider-Man's a great character. How many Spider-Man books do we need? And saying, like the Ultimate line. That was a completely different line, different stories, very often different characterizations. That, cool, great, alternate stories. But when you have Spectacular and Amazing and whatever else is now out there, all telling these stories, and you don't know which line to follow.
Problem I ran into is I had to follow all of them because they're all so interweaved, which is more money I can't afford.
Yeah, and I think that's what Marvel has a problem with too, is keeping the stories collected without making a million books and then interweaving all of those. And crossovers are great. Crossovers can be fun. Daredevil and Spidey, it makes sense when they cross over. They share villains in a lot of ways, share a lot of area, and those can be some great books. But which book do I pick up? It gets confusing after a while. But I think that Marvel does do something smarter with the way that they handle the universes, how they handle what stays, what goes. Occasionally trip, stumble, smash their faces down 50 million stairs like One More Day.
Or Civil War.
And on occasion make Venom cure cancer.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it to a point, but I think with DC, it's a little bit different, in my opinion. In '86, they rebooted every single comic they had. They said, everything you've read is done. We're starting from scratch. And as a young reader, I didn't feel alienated. I felt excited. And actually, it's funny, because for a couple of years, I had a podcast myself, and when the New 52 came out, I bought every book for the first 6 months, and reviewed them on the show. I was excited as a giddy fanboy, but now I hate that crap. And the reason is because the characters, it doesn't matter what you change in their continuity. That's not important. What's important, in my opinion, is keeping to the core of the character, what makes them great. And they've lost their way. These DC characters aren't the iconic characters they should be.
Starfire.
Superman. Starfire, yeah. The 80s DC New Teen Titans run by Marv Wolfman and George Perez is the greatest comic book run of all time. Now, a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that, and that's fine. They can be wrong. But it's amazing. And those characters are not the same, any of them anymore.
Well, the reason I brought up, continuity canon was I had a customer come in who, older gentleman, read comics back in the day, and he picked up a couple back trades for Batman. So this is my standpoint there. And he asked me, okay, so what's happened? So I explained to him how, the entire thing was rebooted and all that. And I swear this guy sounded like he was crying because he loved the Killing Joke and felt that it was no longer a part of everything. And that changed the story for him.
Which that was an amazing book.
It was. Killing Joke. I'm a big fan of A Serious Place on a Serious Earth.
Yes.
But I got where he was coming from, feeling that, his stories were no longer a part of the world. And that's what felt off to him. And it does feel like DC decides to change everything at the drop of a hat. So that coming from there. No, go on.
I was going to say, it did come very quick. That decision to make the New 52, that was decided at a convention. They had a summit at a convention, and they got together. It was MegaCon, in fact, down here in Florida. And they had a big meeting, and that's when they made the decision to do the New 52. And they announced it like September, I think, or I don't know, August, because I think it came out in September, whatever it was. And, yeah, it seemed like it was all hastily put together, because in the beginning they were like, these stories you loved, they still happened, just in a different way, in this 5-year gap. And then all of a sudden, you're seeing stories that contradict the ones that we've seen, and there's no consistent vision at DC right now. I've met Dan DiDio. He's a nice guy. We talked a few times. I have a picture with him on my Facebook, but I don't think he has the vision to run the company right now. And then they take their best writer, Jeff Johns, and they boot him upstairs, and now the books are being written like crap. It was a bad decision.
Okay.
Yeah, Jeff Johns belongs on the writing team. He does. I'm jealous. He works miracles.
We need him back on Avengers. His Avengers are fucking phenomenal.
Avengers, I would love to see him back on Justice League. He did great stuff with Justice League when he was on it. Green Lantern.
Justice Society, Hawkman, yeah, the list goes on. The man's amazing. And making him, like, they said they booted him upstairs and they were like, make movies for us. And he made Green Lantern. I love Hal Jordan, and I don't hate that movie as much as everyone does, but it certainly wasn't a hit.
I'm looking forward to seeing Ryan Reynolds in the role he really should be in, and that's Deadpool. But that's my opinion on that whole Green Lantern mess.
I think he'll be great in Deadpool, and I think people that like Deadpool will love this movie. I don't see it making the money it's going to need to make, because I think Deadpool fans are a smaller minority than Marvel thinks.
That's
and
because
I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong.
That's because the book is a lot harder than a lot of its other mainline books. That's why I enjoyed it for so long, especially when Domino was a major part of the team. Again, mid-90s, leave me alone, I'm old.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the Deadpool movie that they're kind of hoping to grab the same heat Guardians of the Galaxy did. But Deadpool doesn't have that catch for a broader audience, in my opinion.
The Merc with the Mouth is the Merc with the Mouth. He's not Thor. He's not Iron Man. He's not, even though the Marvel heroes are flawed, he's more flawed than even they are. And that's not going to fit well with most people, in my opinion.
Well, you know who Deadpool is? Deadpool's fucking Bugs Bunny. Think about it. He's an R-rated Bugs Bunny. He breaks the fourth wall, disobeys the laws of physics. He's fighting with his friends all the time. Yes, that's Bugs Bunny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just R-rated Bugs Bunny. And that's fine. It's not my thing, but I know there are...
Sorry about the interruption, folks. Once again, we have had technical difficulties. So we were talking about the big two, what they've done right, what they've done wrong. Before we got interrupted, you were saying something about your opinion on the situation, Gene.
Yeah, I think it's sticking to the core of the characters, and I think that's why Marvel is probably doing a better job right now. I'd say, I don't like a lot of the Marvel line right now, but the stuff I like is really solid. Even when going off in vastly different directions, the characters are who they are. Superior Spider-Man, which is on the surface, on paper, the worst idea ever committed to comics, was a fabulous comic because it explored why Spider-Man, why Peter Parker had to be Spider-Man. Doc Ock for 2 years was in Peter's mind, or Peter's body, and as far as he was concerned, he was doing a great job, but he was leaving people in the dust. There were people in fires he wasn't helping, and innocents that were getting robbed because he was too busy looking at the big picture. And that's the thing that kind of makes Spidey work, is that he's a little picture guy. Spidey will always save the guy from the fire before stopping Thanos, because that's who he is. And as long as they know that, and even if you're telling some wildly different story, if you stick to that, you're okay. And that's what DC needs to figure out. They need to remember who their characters are.
Would you agree with that, Jay?
Yeah, I'd agree. It is a big part of it. Because that's what you really do want. You do want your characters even in this new story.
Absolutely.
It's like Spider-Man, in the Ultimates line, I believe, there's so many comics to remember, with Miles. A new person is Spider-Man, a different person, different voice, a different look, everything about it, yet was still Spider-Man. The core parts of the character were there, even with the differences.
That's exactly it.
So would you guys say that's the reason that the Marvel franchise is doing so well? The movies.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, the movies? Well, the movies do capture the core of the characters, sure. Spider-Man is not Spider-Man over at Sony, and that's why Marvel has to pick up the pieces now. But the Avengers, look at Captain America. The scene where everyone's kneeling down and that one old man stands up and Cap just jumps in front and gives that great speech to Loki. And that's Cap. That's the character we know. And as long as you get that. And I think it appealed to a mass crowd because these are cool characters. They're not used to the comic format. So you put them in a place like a movie and it's like, boom, you do it right. And special effects are at a point right now where you can properly do Cap and you can properly do Thor and you can even properly do the Hulk. Even 12 years ago, you couldn't do this movie. It was impossible.
Though there will always be a place in my heart for the Lou Ferrigno Hulk. Come on, that's just cheesy enough to be cool. But yeah, I understand what you're saying about the need for that extra in the visual format. It's not comics.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, I love comics. Comics are a format that I'm always going to be reading comics till the day I die. And there was a time where, comics are just for kids. But they're not. They're really not. I mean, they were instrumental to me as a child, but they're just as big to me as an adult now. That's why I'm spending my time and all my fucking money to make this comic that I'm making now, because I want to give back to the genre that has shaped my life.
Speaking on that, comics for kids, today we're seeing even more comics that are for adults more than kids, that aren't, we've all seen it, Tarot, Old Witchblade, these adult comics, and I'm a fan of Savage Dragon. I'll admit that instantly. Savage Dragon makes fun of cheesecake using cheesecake. But we also do have these, The Walking Dead, which is an adult storyline. We do have, Saga, Why the Last Man, which are meant for adults. And we also, go back to Atomic Robo, which is great for any age. That's just a fun story. We are reaching...
Let me ask you this. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Do you find it strange that the Teletubbies and Walking Dead are both television shows?
Not really. Mainly, I grew up in the 90s, so Batman the Animated Series, Animaniacs, Freakazoid.
All good shows.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that, any medium can have any age, aimed at children, aimed at adults. It just depends on how it's done.
Yes, and it's just accepting that. Most people, let's say like Joe Cornfed from like Minnesota, and I love you, Minnesota, but
Becky's going to kick your butt for that one. You know that, right?
This one's you know what? Becky is awesome. She has my Zero issue. Her profile picture on Facebook is her holding my comic, so she knows I'm just busting chops. I'm just using an example. Like the average American citizen looks at comics as something that are for 10-year-olds, and that's because they were for a long time. But that's changing again with stuff like Walking Dead. There's more sophisticated stuff in comics than there ever has been before, and that's why so many comic things are being adapted into film and TV and movies. Walking Dead, iZombie, Constantine. Let's hope we get the second season.
Oh, that'd be
but
nice.
lots of that'd be really nice. But lots of cool shows, lots of great stuff out there, and because people are finally recognizing that comics have more to offer than previously thought. So right now we're opening up. Comics are at a point, and that's why when we get to independence later, we'll talk about it more probably. But that's why independent comics are doing so well, is they've realized, they've understood that this is a canvas that can be painted on in any color you want, not just primary colors.
Well, this brings up a point, since you have brought up that comics were for kids, and there were our heroes, and they were also used for propaganda during the Second World War. That's where Cap came from. He was able to change. Let's talk about the one that hasn't been able to change, the Big Blue Boy Scout. We have to touch on him because he is so important to the damn genre. He started it. He is the alpha and the omega of the comic world. Superman. Why is his story so hard for these writers to move into the modern age?
How much time do we have?
I've got editing.
Superman is the single most important character in all of comics. As you said, he's the alpha and he's the omega. The problem with Superman is that they do try to change him because their feeling is that Superman should stay with the times. In the 90s, they give him long hair after he died, and now in the
I don't want to even think about that whole dyed shit.
That
just ruined goddamn comics.
Yeah. The thing about Superman, and if DC could figure this out, they'd be perfect, and it's such an obvious thing. Do you know why they can't get Superman right? Because they're trying to change him. Superman is Superman. His moral code is what makes him Superman. Everyone's like, oh, he's a big blue Boy Scout. Yes, he is. He is a guy that every minute of his day is spent. He sits down on a chair. He has to make sure he does it with so little force that he doesn't break the chair. When he shakes someone's hand, he has to make sure he's not destroying that hand forever. And yet, he's a gentle man. And that's Superman. Superman's the guy. He was raised in Kansas, and that's more important than the fact that he was rocketed to Earth as a youth or as a baby or whichever version you want to use. Superman's a good person raised by good people, and that's why. And if you guys disagree, you can tell me. But I'm unbudgeable on this. That's why Man of Steel was a pile of shit because that wasn't Superman, and it wasn't Superman's fault that it wasn't Superman. It was that monster that raised him, that guy they were calling Jonathan Kent.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, let those guys die. Fuck them in that bus. Yeah, screw them. You gotta keep your secret, buddy. Like, oh my God.
The last good iteration of the Superman on screen was Christopher Reeve, in my opinion. That got the core story right,
Yes.
Again, I'm biased.
Job.
What's that?
But he was in a bad. Brandon Routh did a fine job, but he was in a terrible movie.
That when Superman Returned, right?
Yeah. I think the actor did a great job. The actor actually channeled Christopher Reeve really well, but they gave him a crap script and a crap story to have to do with. So that's why that movie failed terribly.
Jay, you want to weigh in on this? I mean, this is a monster subject, I know, and I've been on the web long enough to know that no matter what I say, I'm in the wrong about the Blue Boy Scout. But what do you have to say about him? Why can't the writers get him right?
Honestly, I don't hate Superman as a character. As a well-written character, he is done well. But on the comment of writers can't get him written well, one of those problems for me is that so many writers write him as this is how we should all be and embrace the flawless about him, when really his flawlessness is his flaw, like Gene said. He has to hold everything back. And in a sense, that is a flaw. He can never really be all he can be. But that gets buried away and, power creep. On occasion, he's a bit crazy with what he can do. Which is all fine and good when you're writing that kind of hero, but it feels like you need a list of powers in front of each issue, starring the ones he's going to use, because they're going to be, this chunk's going to use next issue, but for this issue, we're focused on flight, X-ray vision, ice breath, laser vision, and maybe super speed. And he's going to fly in the sun at least 3 times.
Well, he blows up now.
Oh, yes,
He
the
can
solar
explode.
flare Pokemon.
Yes, he has the Pikachu power now, and after he uses it, he is essentially powerless for a period of time.
Okay.
That could be
Yep.
used very well, actually.
That sounds like the dumbest idea in the history of Superman. And
Well, here's the
Superman
thing.
is full of dumb ideas.
Yeah, here's the thing, though. The arc where they did that was drawn by John Romita Jr., and I don't think his art style fits Superman, but that's not important. The thing is, Jeff Johns wrote it, and I'll be honest, reading that storyline, even though I hated the fact that he's got this other dumb power, it's probably the first time in like 12 years that I read an actual Superman story. He did bring back the soups, but unfortunately he's already gone from the book now, and now it's for me to drawing and writing it. And we all know what happens when artists decide they want to write. There are some great artist-writers out there, and if those of you who are listening to the show don't hate me, but there are a lot of bad ones too.
Miller.
You don't automatically. Yeah, McFarlane
Miller
is the worst.
Oh God, don't. How did Spawn go from such a good idea to such a fucking train wreck? That one.
Because ideas are easy, sir.
That one was
execution hard.
I'm sorry, you brought up McFarlane and Spawn. Spawn started off so strong, so it was refreshing, especially in the age of badly written Supermans, badly super clones. You know that whole mess where the mainstream comics have become. It was a nice refreshing, different look for me as a casual viewer, as a casual reader, to have this hero that isn't a hero. He's just a guy trying to do what he needs to do in a shitty circumstance.
Yeah, there's one thing about Spawn. I didn't really like it as much as you did, but there was a thing that was introduced in the first issue of Spawn that made me keep reading the book. And it hooked me. And I was like, holy shit, this is great. Whenever he used his powers, this counter would count down. And if he used his powers too much, it would count down to the end. And if that happened, he would die. And I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. And this counter was in every issue, counting down. If he used his power a lot, it'd go down a lot. And then he finally used the last of it up, and guess what happened? He didn't fucking die. I was like, God damn it. I just stopped reading the book. I never read it again.
That's why I was saying the death of Superman really ruined comics in a lot of ways, because, okay, now I get to do something I hate doing. I'm going to compare apples to oranges. Coulson, prime example. I love him to death. His death served a point in the movie. And then he was brought back in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Granted, spoilers for those that haven't seen the show yet. You've been warned. Granted, it was a horrific, horrible way to come back. And I'm glad they went that route instead of just, it's all peaches and cream. But his death was less meaningful now.
That's true. I mean, I love Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm probably the only one that does.
I love it.
Yeah, you're right. Oh, dude. Oh, good. Oh, God. It's so
I'm waiting.
good.
I have to wait for the second season to come out on Netflix because I'm that far behind.
Oh, dude. Okay, here's the thing. I liked season 1.
Mm-hmm.
But season 2 is 30 times better.
Yeah, like I said, I just got to wait for Netflix because I didn't catch up. I didn't catch the train on this until season 2 had already started. And I'm so far behind, Netflix.
I won't spoil anything for you, sir, but you have an awesome road ahead of you.
So, but how did we're back to the subject, sorry. This happens on the show. This is nerd talking, so this is what's going to happen. This all ties in, though. How does one be a good author and a writer? I mean, McFarlane's a good example of, oh, fuck you, I'm going to shit all over my ideas. As we were saying. Who would you consider of the major two? We haven't hit indies yet because that's about 15 minutes away. We still have so much more to cover in comics. Why did I choose this subject? Jesus Christ.
Well, I did a comic podcast for 3 years, and I didn't cover everything I needed to cover. So
that's why I said broad strokes for this. What do you think, Joe? What do you think? Who is your example of artists getting to be writers that just jump the shark?
See, now I'm trying to think. Because honestly, I don't really look at very often who's doing both. Like, I have authors I like, I have artists I like. So for me, putting the two together, it's like, shit, who do I know?
Besides Miller. Either of them. I think I broke my co-host, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, because now I'm running through. Let Gene go, because Gene might actually make my memory kick.
All right, yeah, let me throw one at you. This is a guy who was actually a writer and an artist, and he did a great job on both. And then one day he just didn't anymore. He did not only jump the shark, he rode the shark with laser eyes, and that would be John Byrne, who was a freaking legend in the industry. He wrote and drew, and he was perfect, and then all of a sudden one day he wasn't anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. His Alpha Flight stuff was top notch. Made me care about characters that I shouldn't have liked. Yeah, everything he did was great, and then just one day he's like, I'm going to leave Marvel and DC and do some indies. And you think that would be a great move for him, but from then on, like next men up, his stuff has been poop. Even when he went back to Marvel and DC, it just wasn't the same.
Okay, what type of indies did he do?
He did Next Men for Dark Horse. He did a book. God, what was that book called? It was about this girl who ran around naked a lot, and I don't remember what the book was because I didn't bother reading it.
There's so many.
And
you're going to have to be a little more specific. We're talking about comics here. Women that run around naked a lot is almost a plot device in them, in half of them.
That's true. I can't remember the name of that one. But there was a book that he did. He did a lot of Star Trek stuff. He's currently doing Star Trek stuff for IDW, and it's just not very good. And I love Star Trek, and I love John Byrne, so that's like a natural mix for me. You know, I should be like, yeah, but I'm like, just not working.
Okay, here's a question. Mostly because I was lucky enough to get one of the artists to do the cover piece on my book, Eli, my forthcoming novel, which is in editing right now since we're pushing stuff. I got Eli Stone to do the cover to my book, who was an artist for the Tick.
Cool.
Yeah, that's what I said. I got to help the deal. Let's go ahead and start. Would you guys consider the Tick the beginning of the indie revolution?
Jay, you want to go first?
The Tick did help kick things off. Yeah, I'd say so. The Tick was kind of an out of nowhere hit, really, at least in the underground scene. But I mean, it went up. Cartoon, toys,
2 live action series.
Yeah, 2. One of which sadly just burned out like 5 episodes in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say the Tick holds a very special place in indies. And that it
yeah.
No. Gene?
I'm so sorry. I
it's
love
fine.
interrupting. I don't love doing it, but I do it a lot. The Tick came out at a very important time. In the very early 80s, there was this boom of independent comics, of people, and at this point, this is the beginning of the true independent comics. Now, we can argue, and I'm not going to do it now because you don't have a lot of time, but I can argue that independent comics started with Will Eisner in the 30s. But I'm not going to do that because we don't have time for that shit. But in the early 80s, there was these bunch of people who were like, I want to make comics, but screw Marvel and DC. I'm going to make my own stuff, and I'm going to do it. And The Tick was one of those books. I don't know that it was the reason that the indie push happened. It definitely benefited from it. But I think if you wanted to give a single book credit for the independent boom of the 80s, it would have to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Love that series.
Which, did you know that was a parody book? You know what books it was parodying? Yeah, it was a parody of everything that was popular in comics at the time, which happened to be Daredevil, Teen Titans, and X-Men.
Yep. Which is where the team of 4 came from. But he took it to the Revenge one because he was tired of these Teen Titans and whatnot not going as far as they thought they should. Yes, I know TMNT. I know the comics. I know the cartoon. I think IDW has the better comic instead of the original. I'm in that camp. I'm also in the camp that, as much as I love the original cartoon, I think the 2000 cartoon was better.
Man.
Better story, better writing, better character development.
Yeah, Turtle started. It made people realize that you didn't have to be at Marvel or DC to have a book that really took off. And so as a result, you had this whole boom. And then you had companies like First and Kamiko and, so many, just literally dozens of companies popping up. And some of them did really well. Bill Willingham created the Elementals, which is, a lot of people think Watchmen did all this great stuff, and I love Watchmen. I pray at its altar. But Elementals did stuff that Watchmen did years before, and it just doesn't get the attention. But yeah, Justice Machine. They even did superhero stuff, which was amazing because no one can do that but Marvel or DC. Well, to hell with that. These guys did it anyway, and I think they did it better at a time when Marvel and DC were putting out their absolute best material.
James?
But yeah, the boom... Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. The boom, you said?
The boom started in a number of different ways. You have stuff like Grendel and, I could just name comics for a year. I'm not going to do that.
I've read Grendel. I don't see the hype about it. I really don't.
I think it was cool and street level. I mean, you're like Hunter Rose was just kind of a cool character. He was James Bond meets Daredevil to me.
See, I had the opposite effect. It was, this is crap writing. Again, Grendel's one of those that it's very polarizing. And
absolutely.
I'm not going to get into that because I respect you too much, but
You're not the first person that said that to me, and like I said, I dug it. And that's the cool thing about comics is we can talk about comics for hours, and there's stuff that I absolutely love that you absolutely hate, and vice versa. And that's cool, because we shouldn't like the same stuff. We shouldn't have the exact same opinions on everything. That would make it pretty boring.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have the genesis of the modern independent comics in the 80s. Take us through the history of where it's been in the 90s and that compared to today. What improvements